What in the hell? That was Mr. Howard Beck and myself. Not from this past week when we had Howard on, but when Howard was back on in March, episode number 147 to be precise. But today is Sunday, July 10th, 2016. This is Celtics Beat on CLNS Radio, and I am Larry H. Russell. And while I have the privilege, the benefit to do this on a week-to-week, as opposed to a minute-by-minute basis, like Twitter, which I certainly took advantage of this past week, as you can see for yourself on my @CLNS_LHR handle. But to take it all in, let the days go by, the emotions waver, settle on a little bit, think things long and hard and 10 times over before I take the air here every Sunday morning. My opinion, my reaction to the news back on the holiday regarding one Kevin Durant has not budged 1 millimeter. I feel precisely how I did nearly 1 week later in the seconds following when I received the news via text from Nick Gelso. Again, what in the hell? For one, let's start with what I was immediately tweeting out and was chirping about in the lead up to Mr. Durant's announcement. How could he even consider, let alone decide, but how could he even consider a team whom he lost an excruciating playoff series? Well, I guess it wasn't too excruciating to him now, was it? But to everybody else, it seemed like a heartbreaking playoff defeat just a few weeks prior. How could one even consider, after rallying his teammates, his so-called brothers, his so-called comrades, be in the center of that huddle, arms over arms, and then again, weeks later, say, hey guys, that team I really wanted us to beat, who we had one of the most intense blood wars with in recent NBA playoffs history, I'm actually going to go play for them, if that's cool. No. No, it's not cool. I know free agency, the more prevalent it has become over the last 25 years as opposed to the first 40 years of the NBA, player movement was minimal and was only done through trades and purchases of contracts. And now in all sports, all major pro sports, athletes can move more freely in the league. Fans have always been attached to players. The better you are, the more attached they seemingly are most of the time. And then sometimes, over time, they go to another team, another rival, even if that's the case. Certainly here in Boston, we're familiar with that. Adam Vinatieri signing with the Colts. Although, disclaimer, after the Patriots did not make much of an effort to retain his services. Roger Clemens eventually forcing a trade to the Yankees in the twilight of his career, which again, disclaimer, Dan Duquette did not make much of an effort to re-sign. Johnny Damon of the Yankees, which, disclaimer, the Red Sox made minimal effort to re-sign, and on, you can do it in reverse. Bruins fans having a hard time accepting Chris Nyland after all those years, gooning it up for the hated Canadians. But we know it's a business for the players. Always defended that. I don't want to say that athletes owe the fans nothing, as after all, the consumer has done a lot more for said athletes than we'd like to believe. But they certainly owe themselves and their immediate families much, much more than they do the fan who developed an emotional attachment to them. But there was one potential example, which I deliberately did not mention, that may have come to your mind, and that is because it is so unique in its own right, and that was Ray Allen leaving the Celtics to join the Miami Heat. He who was on a Celtics team that had their 2 prior seasons ended by those very Miami Heat, including a gut-wrenching 7-gamer just weeks prior to Ray's decision. And that just didn't offend Celtics fans, but players on that team, teammates for Ray Allen for many, many years, whom they did battles with, whom they developed common interests, common disdains, such as for LeBron James, teammates to develop a bond with. The whole message of that group of Ubuntu, Ray Bolt's for that particular Celtics team most bitter rival, just 3 weeks after an electric playoff series with, and there was a reaction of, wait, was this guy really with us all along? Fairly or unfairly, everyone asked, was he dedicated to his team trying to achieve the ultimate goal of winning a championship for himself and his teammates? And to this day, Kevin Garnett has never forgiven Ray Allen for that. And yes, was Allen disrespected and a bit removed from that particular 2012 Celtics group? Very much so. But even that, you'd like to think the destination of Miami should have been disqualified for that reason alone, of how on earth could you do that to your fellow teammates, particularly teammates who you accomplished so much with and shared so many memories with. But even Allen, especially on that Celtics team, was a piece. He was a role player. Remember, Rajon Rondo essentially demanded to Doc Rivers to relegate Allen to the bench, and much of his decision to join the Heat was to spurn the Celtics. This, what one Kevin Durant did, is unprecedented in the history of sports. You often hear, fans love the Benedict Arnold. And I actually think in this instance, mentioning those two in the same sentence is actually an insult to General Arnold. He who himself was passed over for a promotion by the Rebels and said, you know what, F you guys, I'm joining the Crown and I'll get back at you for stiffing me. Kevin Durant, one of the 3 best players in the NBA, he was the last MVP of this league, not named Curry. He was Oklahoma City's best player, playing a game where one individual has more impact on the outcome of this great sport than any other team sport by far. He's as responsible for his team winning and losing. He and Russell Westbrook get the most credit when they win, and if they don't play up to the standards that are set for them, should get equal credit for losses, such as, letting a 3-1 series lead get away from them in the Western Conference Finals against those very Warriors, which we all would like to believe for any competitor would create an obsession, even a hatred towards the very team that took away what he possibly thought was his. It would be unfathomable to think he'd actually even consider for 2 fractions of a second that he'd play for that team alone, let alone actually going about and deciding to join them. But I guess that feeling of disappointment was never truly there. What Kevin Durant did on Monday has never been done. Professional athletes have experienced heartbreak for years. It's, to use the word again, unprecedented in the NBA. It's never happened. Dr. J, years of losing to the Celtics and Lakers, never forced a move to then go play for those particular teams. 6 years of heartbreaking losses in the playoffs. Finally teamed up with Moses Malone, who hated losing to the Lakers and Celtics himself. Finally, they break through in 1983. Isaiah Thomas, years of losing to the Celtics, but using those defeats to provide motivation, finally getting over the hump, finally winning a title, and then another the year after that. Michael Jordan suffering 3 consecutive playoff defeats to Detroit, sacrificed some individual numbers, assimilated into Phil Jackson's triangle offense, swept the Pistons in 91, and off and away he went. LeBron James, that's the example everyone's using. No, it's just not the same thing. I mean, he couldn't do it with 11 other guys named Fred. He was in Cleveland for 7 years. The Cavs spent a max salary slot on Larry Hughes. He carried a bunch of bums to the 2007 finals, won 66 games, and said, listen, I got to get help and do this with other great players. But he didn't go join the Celtics, the team that was blocking him from the finals for the final 3 years of his Cleveland career. It was about beating Boston. Lastly, how about this? Jerry West, who was supposedly had a heart-to-heart conversation with Kevin Durant, discussed his own career, losing all 7 of his finals matchups to Bill Russell's Celtics. You don't want to go through that again, what I did, KD, huh? I mean, come here. If Jerry West forced a move to the Boston Celtics, he would have racked up the titles. But would he have built the legacy which he has to this day and will have forever? Would he be the logo of the NBA?